Rodri arrives.
Rodri, best player at the tournament, Adidas Golden Ball.
Anthony Gordon.
Gordon opens up!
Karim Adeyemi.
Adeyemi quick, past Kepa, look out, he scored on the counter!
Barcelona are not simply signing players. They are trying to build a team capable of doing two things at the same time: dominating La Liga and becoming a serious contender in the UEFA Champions League. And that's not the same challenge. La Liga requires consistency, squad depth, and the ability to break down defensive teams week after week. But in the Champions League, Barcelona will need something more: midfield control, defensive balance, physicality, and the ability to survive against Europe's best teams. Anthony Gordon and Karim Adeyemi have already added something different to the attack. And if Rodri arrives, Barcelona could finally be addressing one of the biggest weaknesses in their squad. So the real question is, are Barcelona building a team that can dominate Spain and compete with Europe's elite? Let's break it down. Barcelona are not rebuilding from zero. They already have elite technical quality. They have Lamine Yamal, Raphinha, Pedri, Frenkie de Jong, Dani, Olmo, and several other talented players. The problem is not simply talent, it's balance. Barcelona's recruitment appears to be targeting two things they previously lacked: more unpredictability in attack and more control in midfield. Gordon and Adeyemi bring pace, direct running, and the ability to attack space. Rodri, if the move happens, would bring something completely different: protection, control, and defensive stability. And that's the key word behind this entire rebuild: balance. This could be the most important part of Barcelona's rebuild, because look at the midfield they already have. Pedri gives you control and creativity. Frenkie de Jong gives you ball carrying and progression. Dani Olmo gives you quality between the lines. Fermín López gives you intensity, penetration, and runs into the box. But what does Barcelona lack? A midfielder whose natural instinct is to sit, protect, and control. That's where Rodri comes in. When Barcelona's fullbacks push forward and the team loses possession, someone has to protect the space in front of the center backs. Rodri is built for that. He can read passing lanes, control the tempo, and protect the defensive structure while still being comfortable enough on the ball to fit Barcelona's possession game. And more importantly, his presence could give everyone else more freedom. Rodri provides protection. Pedri can focus more on creativity. Olmo can attack the spaces between the lines. De Jong can focus on carrying and progressing the ball. So Rodri's value isn't only what he does himself, it's what he allows the players around him to do. Maybe the most interesting thing about Barcelona's rebuild isn't actually the new signings, it's who is already there. Because if you look at the Spain team that just won the 2026 World Cup, you start to notice something very interesting. Barcelona are becoming Spain. 8 Barcelona players were part of Spain's World Cup winning squad: Joan Garcia, Eric Garcia, Pau Cubarsí, Gavi, Pedri, Dani Olmo, Ferran Torres, and Lamine Yamal. And now, add one more name to that group: Rodri. The player who controlled Spain's midfield during their World Cup triumph is now joining the same club as many of the players he just won the World Cup with. Think about what that means. Rodri already knows Pedri, he knows Dani Olmo, he knows Gavi, he knows Lamine Yamal. He knows exactly how these players move, how they press, how they create space, and how they want to play. So Barcelona aren't simply collecting talented players. They're bringing together the core of a team that has already proven it can win the biggest prize in international football. And that's what makes this Barcelona project so fascinating. For years, Barcelona were trying to rebuild the identity that made them dominant, but perhaps they have found another route. Instead of trying to recreate the old Barcelona, they are building a new Spain inside Barcelona. Pedri gives them the control and creativity. Olmo gives them intelligence between the lines. Gavi brings aggression and pressing. Yamal gives them individual brilliance. Cubarsí gives them composure at the back, and now Rodri gives them the midfielder capable of connecting everything together. That's a completely different perspective on this signing. Rodri isn't arriving as an isolated superstar. He's arriving into a dressing room filled with players who already understand his football. And that could make his adaptation much faster. But there's something even bigger here. Spain's World Cup winning team wasn't successful simply because they had talented players. They had chemistry. They understood their roles. They understood when to press. They understood when to control the game. And they understood how to move together. Barcelona now have the opportunity to recreate some of that chemistry at club level. Of course, Barcelona is not Spain. Club football is different. The season is much longer. The Champions League brings completely different challenges, and Hansi Flick will have to build his own system rather than simply copying Luis de la Fuente. But imagine the potential. The same players who have just experienced what it takes to win a World Cup now have to do it together every week at club level. And this is where Rodri could become the final piece. Because if Barcelona can combine the chemistry of Spain's World Cup winners with the attacking talent of Yamal, Raphinha, Gordon and Adeyemi, then this could become much more than another Barcelona rebuild. This could be Spain 2.0, but at club level. And that brings us to the biggest problem Barcelona now have. They have an incredible amount of midfield talent. Barcelona now have Pedri, De Jong, Olmo, Fermín and Rodri. That's an incredible amount of talent. But football isn't about putting the most talented players on the pitch. It's about putting the right combination of players on the pitch. If too many midfielders are focused on going forward, Barcelona can become vulnerable when possession is lost. The midfield becomes exposed. Opponents can attack the space between midfield and defense. And with a high defensive line, one transition can become extremely dangerous. That's why Rodri could be so important. The question isn't, does Barcelona have enough midfielders? The question is, does Barcelona have the right midfield balance? And that will be one of Hansi Flick's biggest tactical decisions this season. Now let's move to the attack, because Barcelona's wings are becoming extremely dangerous. Anthony Gordon brings directness. He's willing to run at defenders, attack space, and create danger in transition. He's also capable of contributing to the press, which makes him more than just an attacking player. Then you have Karim Adeyemi. His biggest weapon is explosive pace. He can attack the space behind defensive lines, stretch opponents vertically, and threaten teams in transition. And his ability to play across the front line gives Flick another tactical option. But here's what makes these signings really interesting. Barcelona don't just have more attackers. They now have different types of attackers. Yamal gives you creativity and 1v1 quality. Raphinha gives you movement and productivity. Gordon gives you directness. Adeyemi gives you speed and depth. That means Barcelona can hurt opponents in different ways. They can patiently combine against a low block, or they can simply attack the space behind a high defensive line. That's a major upgrade in attacking variety. But there is one problem. How do you fit all of these players together? Because Yamal, Raphinha, Gordon and Adeyemi all bring elite attacking qualities, but some of them can naturally move into similar spaces. If everyone comes inside, Barcelona could create congestion. That's where Flick becomes important. Barcelona need clear principles. When Yamal moves inside, someone has to provide width. When one winger drops to receive, another player needs to threaten the space behind. When the fullback moves forward, someone needs to protect the space he leaves behind. So the objective isn't to restrict these players, it's to coordinate them. If Flick gets this right, Barcelona won't just have 4 excellent attackers. They could have a complete attacking unit. And then there's Ferran Torres. He may not be the biggest name in this attack, but now we reach the biggest question. Can Hansi Flick actually make all of this work? On paper, Barcelona could use a 4-2-3-1 or move into different structures depending on the phase of play. The exact formation is less important than the principles. Barcelona need width. They need controlled rotations. They need players attacking the half spaces. They need depth behind the defensive line. And when possession is lost, they need immediate defensive organization. This is where Rodri could become extremely important. If the fullbacks push forward, Rodri can protect the center. If the wingers press high, the midfield needs to remain compact. If Barcelona lose the ball, the team needs to react collectively rather than leaving the defense exposed. So Flick's biggest challenge is simple. How do you give Barcelona enough attacking freedom without losing defensive balance? That is the tactical puzzle. And this brings us to the bigger question. Can this Barcelona team win La Liga? Absolutely, they have the talent. But La Liga requires consistency. They need squad depth, they need rotation, and they need to avoid depending on 1 or 2 players every week. The Champions League is different. There, Barcelona will face teams capable of punishing the smallest tactical mistake. They will need midfield control. They will need physicality. They will need transition defense. And they will need a strong bench. That's why these additions could be so important. Barcelona can win La Liga with quality, but to compete for the Champions League, they need balance. And ultimately, everything comes down to one person, Hansi Flick, because Barcelona now have an impressive collection of profiles. Rodri, control. Pedri, creativity. De Jong, progression. Olmo, between the lines quality. Yamal, individual brilliance. Raphinha, productivity. Gordon, directness. Adeyemi, pace. Ferran, versatility. But having these qualities isn't enough. Flick has to connect them. He has to define their roles. He has to manage their minutes. He has to maintain the pressing structure. He has to prevent attacking talent from destroying defensive balance. And he has to make sure the players complement each other rather than compete for the same spaces. Talent creates possibilities. Coaching creates results. And that's why Flick may be the most important piece of this entire project. So, is Barcelona ready? Let's answer 3 questions. First, will Rodri arrive? If he does, Barcelona could finally have the defensive midfielder capable of giving their midfield the balance it has been missing. Second, can Gordon and Adeyemi add another dimension to the attack? If they do, Barcelona will no longer rely so heavily on Yamal and Raphinha for attacking creativity and danger. And third. Can Hansi Flick make all of these profiles work together? That's the biggest question, because Barcelona don't have a talent problem. They have a balance problem to solve. If Rodri arrives, if Flick finds the right balance between defensive structure and attacking freedom, and if Gordon and Adeyemi integrate successfully with Yamal and Raphinha, Barcelona could have a squad much better equipped for the Champions League. So this rebuild isn't really about buying more stars. It's about turning individual quality into a complete team. Talent creates possibility, balance creates consistency, and coaching turns both into trophies. That's the real test for Barcelona this season. And if you enjoyed the analysis, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to A9_sports for more football analysis and tactical breakdowns. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.